Welcome back, my dear friends, students. A very good morning, good afternoon and good evening to all of you who is taking this course. The title of this course is Multi-Criteria Decision Making, and my good name is Raghunandan Sengupta from the IME department at IIT Kanpur. And this course Multi-Criteria Decision Making is under the MOOC NPTEL lecture series. And as you are aware, this is a 60 lecture series spread over 12 weeks, and each week we have 5 lectures, each lecture being for half an hour. So, we are, for your kind information, we are in the 10th week. So, if you remember till the 8th or 9th week we were 8th week we were discussing about different concepts of utility, different concept of multi-criteria decision making by objective, and considering all the different nuances of that. And then we started with the concept of TOPSIS, and we are in this lecture. I will talk about the lecture number. The lecture number is 47th out of the 61, and we are discussing about the ELECTRE process. And the broader context is under the multi-criteria decision making. We have already covered multi-objective decision making, few of the tools, some concept of multi-attribute decision making, and we are now in the subjective ways of trying to analyze multi-criteria. So, the coverage, as we know that we started, would be in the method of ELECTRE, which is known as elimination and choice translation reality. So, if you remember in ELECTRE process, the overall steps was to basically find out the discordant and concordant set. Like in the concept of TOPSIS and other method I did mention time and again, we wanted to find out the most positive distance, most negative distance, find out the ratios and then rank them. And this distance was basically based on the concept of L2 norm in the Cartesian coordinate. Here the concept of the discordant and concordant set is not exactly similar to the NIS and PIS concept, most positive or more negative. It is basically how concordance means positive set of criterias which help in making the decision on the alternatives, and another way the discordant is that negative way of trying to analyze. That means, if you take it, what are the negative impact. So, obviously, making any decision would give you both positive and negative impact of the decision, like buying the best house location wise, safety wise, with more number of rooms, and where the bus stop or the transportation nearby and all these things centrally located, obviously will cost high. Or trying to basically buy a car which is really high ended in the engineering sense, good safety features, good power of the engine, good space for passengers, good safety requirements, would obviously would cost high. So, in the similar way. So, in the fourth step is basically after the indices, concordance and discordant indices are found out based on each comparison, and we construct the concordance on the discordant matrices. Now, if you remember, concordance would basically add up to the value such that you give the corresponding weightages which you had allotted for those criteria would be added up, and the matrix based on the concordance and discordance, if you remember, I had mentioned it is not a symmetric matrix, but if you add up the sum of these opposite elements like I j and j I, they should add up to 1. So, the discordance matrix D, as we had been denoting, the discordance matrix D basically expresses the degree that a certain alternative A k is worse than a competing alternative A I. So, when I am comparing, what I am doing is I am comparing A I with respect to A k. alternatives. So, obviously, if I choose AI and if it is concordance, I will denote by blue. So, obviously, you give positive weightages or more weightages as the weightages are added up. So, you will basically have the concordance set C, I am marking in blue color, and if I have the discordance, I would basically have the discordance set which I am marking in red. So, based on the indices I find out C and D. So, here if AK is worse than its competing alternative in choosing the criteria, and the concordance and discordance elements would be coming from each and every criteria, like consider power of an engine and consider you have, say for example, a car 1 and a car 2. So, it based on the power, if car 1 is better, so not choosing that is a disadvantage. So, we will try to analyze that problem accordingly. So, D expresses the degree that a certain alternative AK is worse than its competing alternative based on the fact for the jth criteria. And if you remember, we have analyzed and taken into consideration that there are m number of alternatives and n number of criteria. So, when we take the elements of the discordant matrix, we will basically try to analyze the ratio of the max. So, when you are taking the max of the difference, we will only consider in the numerator, we will only consider the discordant which we do not like, and when we take in the denominator is basically set of all the alternatives based on the criteria which are there. That means, we are trying to basically find out what is the maximum, the ratio of the maximum of the non-liking divided by the total set of liking disliking combined together. So, we want to find out the elements of the discordant matrix which is given by this. Now, why we want to do that is basically we want to find out what is the maximum level of discomfort. Similarly, the idea can be that can we find out the maximum level of comfort? Answer is yes, but if you remember that when we had started discussing about the subjective way of trying to analyze the problems multi criterias, we have considered the Topsis method, we are considering the ELECTRE method, we will consider the Vicor and the AHP method. There are other methods also, Macbeth and all these things. The focus is always on what is the loss, because human beings want to basically minimize the loss rather than the gain. Gain would be positive obviously, but people are more concerned about the loss. So, based on the fact the discordant matrix is being analyzed, and we will try to basically take that discordant matrix in such a way that we are able to rank them based on the discordant values or discordant matrix values, such that the level of dissatisfaction is the least. Dissatisfaction is basically the word I am using when you consider the discordant concept. So, based on the concordance and the discordance concepts, we have the values of the discordant matrices values. So, here in the first, so here what I mean by, so if I consider, let me use a different color, let me use the green color. So, when I am taking max of j is equal to 1, 2, 3 or j is equal to 1 to 3, in both the cases of the numerator, you are considering all of this comparison together and you are taking the maximum of them, and the numerator will only consider those which are dissatisfactory, which you do not like, which you do not want to take the decision. Even if you have taken the decision, what is the overall negative impact is going to have. So, do not like, discomfort or negative impact, all these words I am using in a sense that I want to basically portray that what would be the overall discordance set based on which we will try to analyze. So, when we find out, when you are comparing 1 to 2, 1 to 3, the values come out to be so the red part would be the discordance. So, it is only 1 and 2, and here it is only 2 because where the discordant values are. So, when I am trying to analyze, it will be analyzing the discordance and the ratios. So, the discordance ratios based on D1 to D13 when you are comparing 1 to 2, 1 to 3 would be given by this values 1, 1. So, what does 1, 1 mean? That means the level of discomfort when I am trying to find out between 1 and 2 or 1 and 3 is 1, which would mean that on the level of discomfort I am facing the maximum amount of disadvantage. Based on that, I will try to basically analyze. So, here again I am saying we are not looking at the benefits, we are looking at the discomfort, disadvantage. So, based on the disadvantage scale. So, lower the disadvantage would be the highest and maximum the disadvantage would be the lowest. If I am considering from the point of a concordance liking, maximum liking would be the highest, least liking would be the lowest, it is just the reverse. So, based on that I find out D12, D13, and if you remember, if you go back to the slides are already there with you when you are doing this 47th lecture, obviously would have gone through the set of slides for the previous one. So, based on that I find out the values of D12 and D13 as 1. When I am trying to compare D21 and D23, the values comes out to be, considering the comparison is for max of all those discomfort in the numerator and max of all of them in the numerator in the denominator. So, the values come out to be 0.31 and 0.64, which means that if I in a very layman terms, if I consider D12, the value is 1. If I consider D21, the value is 0.31, considers 1/3 of that, which means the level of discomfort I will have in choosing 2 with respect to 1 is 1/3 of that value, which would have arisen if I have taken 1 and not 2. So, 2 basically choosing 2 is basically is an advantage, which my level of discomfort, level of disadvantage is much lower. In the similar sense, you can compare D13 with D31 also. So, when I compare, as I was saying, when I compare D31, which is 0.37, I am just circling it, with the value of D13, which is 1, which means that if I have chosen 1, my lower total amount of discomfort is the maximum level of 1. But if I had chosen 3 and not 1, and they are being compared 1:1, 2 is not coming into the picture, considering that all my concentration is there when I am trying to compare 1 with 3 or 3 with 1, 2 is out of the scene. There the value is 37. So, about 1/3 of the discomfort level is there, that means it has reduced by 2/3. But very interestingly, if I compare D32, which is 1, and I compare D23, which is 0.64, that means there the ratio of choosing 2 and not 3, the level of discomfort has reduced by 1/3, because I am considering 0.67 or 0.64 as almost the same value. So, here it is 2/3 and there it is 1. Another thing, if I consider 1 3 as 1 and 1 2 3 1 as 0.37, which we have already discussed. So, let me write down the values. So, D12, D13, D21, D23, D31, D32. D32 is 1, D31 is 0.37. I am comparing these values. Then do D2 0.64, D21 is 0.31 and D1213 is 11. So, let us do a rudimentary of analysis. I will use different colors of comparison. So, D12 the green, blue, red whatever color I am going to use, I am not placing any importance on the color, but only to link them up. D13 has to be compared with 12 with D21. Then D13 has to be compared with this, and finally D23 with this. So, if I see the green color, so it is better to choose 2 with respect to 1. If I see the linkage of blue color, it is better to choose 3 with respect to 1. If I check the light darkish yellow one, is better to choose 2 with respect to 3. So, if I want to rudimentarily, I will go into the details. So, if I compare, so obviously, I will mark them as 3 to 1. So, obviously, the green one would give me 2 is better in a sense than 1. If I compare the blue one, 3 is better than 1. If I compare 2, 3, so 2 is better than 3. So, if I am able to rank, obviously, it would immediately give me the idea that 2 is better than 3 is better than 1. But it could have been that here in place of 2 being greater than 3, you could have had this 3 is better than 2. I am not going to the values as such, it could have come out that. In that case, the ranking would be 2 is better than 1, 3 is better than 1, and if I say that 3 is better than 2, then obviously the ranking would have been 3 to 1. So, you could have analyzed them on the discomfort level, which is basically looking at the other side of lower the discomfort, more the profit or more the positive value. Now, construct the concordance and discordant matrices. Thus, the discordant matrix would basically be the values which I have just written down. So, when I have the d values, they are not the weights as I found out in the case of concordance. Again, the principal diagonal where I am drawing this black line and the elements are not symmetric. And also remember one thing, in the concordance set, as we are adding up the weights, hence the sum of the weights of the mirror image of the principal diagonal were 1. Here, if we add up the values, they are the levels of discomfort and they are nothing to do with the weights. So, the weights were used for the concordance set. Here 1 plus 0.31, obviously it would not add up to 1, 1 plus 0.37 not add up to 1, 1 plus 0.64 not add to 1. So, this is an asymmetric along the principal diagonal as already mentioned. Now, you have done the concordance, you have done the discordance, and only looking at the concordance you would have been able to analyze, only looking at the discordance you would have been able to analyze. But what is needed is that trying to find out that concordance is positive, discordance is negative. So, in what sense, which of the alternatives basically scores a positive value in both the senses. Both the senses means concordance also it is giving positive value, discordance it is also given positive value. Concordance means positive thing in the sense it is higher up, and the discordance it would be on the lower side, when basically lower side in the sense on the discordant or discomfort level. So, once we find out the concordance and the discordance matrices, we need to find out a threshold of the concordance index, and this threshold would be based on the fact that alternative A k will dominate A L if and only if the value of k, when you are comparing the concordance values of k to L, if it is greater than some C star value, obviously the threshold index is positive, in the sense it is better to choose the kth alternative with respect to the lth alternative on the positive front. So, can we decide the threshold value? The answer is yes. The formula is given of C star like this, which is 1 by m minus 1, m into m minus 1, and you remember m and n are the corresponding numbers of alternatives and criteria. So, when you are comparing the alternatives, it is based on the criterias comparison. Alternatives can be compared based on the criterias only, the characteristics what you want to achieve, and based on the m number of alternatives which you have used, find out the C star value, and it is basically sum of all these concordance values for all L and k, which is basically from taking together from 1 to m, total number of alternatives. So, once we have that, putting the formula, I get a value of C star as 0.5. Now, when the C star is 0.5, I will find out if it is positive. Obviously, it will, I will assign a score, that means yes, threshold value is exceeded, it is good, I will take the decision. So, 0.5 would mean that when, if I go back to the set of comparison, the concordance set, based on that I have the concordance dominance matrix. So, this is given by the factor f or matrix f, and remember I am trying to basically compare with respect to the C star, which is 0.5, half. Now, what it means is, here I will try to draw some or conclude some interesting points. Again, principal diagonal, the elements along the principal diagonal are not symmetric, it is asymmetric, and the values are 1 0 1 1 0 1. I just read the values, and now let us compare. So, when I compare, so here what we have, along the rows we have the alternatives, and we are comparing the alternatives with themselves. Hence, the 1 1 2 2 3 3 principal diagonal value elements are comparison with itself. So, there is no use of trying to basically find a score or write off any score along the principal diagonal. But when I compare A 1, which is the first row, so with respect to A 2, it is 0. That means, if I take alternative A 1 with respect to A 2, there is no such advantage on the concordance set. So, it is basically, it has not crossed the threshold. So, basically is the value is 0. If I compare A 1 with A 3, the value is 1. Look at the principal, the first list of elements on the first row, it is 1. That means, it definitely makes sense that you have taken A 1 with respect to A 3, I have chosen A 1. So, some positive impact is coming. Now, when I compare A 2 with A 1, the value is 1, which means that choosing A 1 did not give me any value positive thing, but when I chose A 2 with respect to A 1, the value is 1 crossing the threshold, which means it makes sense to choose A 2 with respect to A 1, but it does not make any sense in trying to choose A 1 with respect to A 2. Now, if I compare the value of 2 to 3, so obviously A 2 is better than A 3. When I compare A 3 with respect to A 1, it is 1, A 3 with respect to A 2, it is 0, which means it does not make much sense in trying to choose A3 with respect to A2, but it makes sense in trying to choose A2 with respect to A3. That is why it is 1. So, based on that positive impact, I basically compare positive things. I have not come into the discordant concept. Now, in the similar way, I try to find out the discordance. Remember again, concordance based on the weights, discordant based on the values which you have just seen. Again, the concordance and discordant value, the threshold is given by the same value d star is calculated as 0.75. Based on that, threshold coverage is 1, threshold not being covered is 0. Again, I compare. This is on the negative impact. Now, on the negative impact, if I see A1 with A2, it is 1. That means, choosing A1 gives me a lot of, on the disbenefit scale, it is definitely not warranted. I definitely do not want to like. When I compare A1 to A3, again trying to choose A1 with respect to A3, definitely on the negative impact disadvantage, it is not at all advisable. Now, there was an other side of the story also, which we just covered. When I have chosen A1 to A3, A1 gave me positive on the positive scale. When I am choosing A1 with respect to A3, I am getting a negative on the negative scale. That means, choosing A1 comes with a baggage, both positive sense as well as the negative sense, it is basically being more tilted towards A1. So, obviously, you would say that I am getting the benefit good, but I am also getting along with that a list of disbenefit also when I choose A1 with respect to A3. So, that is why it is 1 1 both on the positive and the negative scale. If I compare the values of A1, A2 with A1, A2 is plus 1 in the concordance set. When I go on the disbenefit scale is 0, that means, on the benefit scale it is positive, but on the negative scale or on the baggage scale is 0. That means, if I compare that with A2 with A1, that means I am getting a positive thing only, anything negative impact is not there, which is totally different way when I was trying to compare A1 with A3 and A3 with A1. So, A1 when it came with both the positive and the negative one. When I chose A2 with respect to A1, it came with the positive only, not with the negative impact. So, based on that, I find out the aggregate. So, aggregate means I found out the concordance, I found out the discordance, I found out the benefits, I found out the disbenefits, and then I try to compare them. So, if it is positive on the benefit scale, positive on the negative scale, positive means on the lower side, it is giving me benefits as well, and I am choosing it is not giving me the disbenefits, obviously that is a win-win situation. So, I will basically try to compare them. So, I will basically combine the values to find out the aggregate dominance matrix, which is E, which is a multiplication of F and G in their corresponding cells. So, when I do that, so what I have? I had elements of 0 1 1 1 1 0. So, it was 0 1 1 1 1 0. So, let me see 0 1 1 1 1 0, and in this scale it is 1 1 0 0 0 1. So, pencil triangle not being there would mean 1 1 0 0 1 1 0 0 0 1. So, if I compare the values in the sense that this is basically A1, A2, A3, this is A1, A2, A3 on the concordance, on the discordance on the concordance, and this is A1, A2, A3, A1, A2, A3. So, when I compare multiply them, so 0 into 1 is 0, 1 into 1 is 1, 1 into 0 is 0. So, all the values are calculated based on concordance and discordance and the final aggregate dominance matrix based on concordance and discordance is given. Now, from the aggregate one, if I find out, so when we have been trying to do the discordance concept, I was always mentioning the discordance values being high is not wanted, concordance value being high is wanted. When I am considering the discordance ones, I am putting the score for which the discordant concept is lower, I put a higher score. So, based on that, when I find out the aggregate dominance and dominance matrix based on C and D, I have this. From the aggregate dominance matrix, we can derive a partial preference. And what is the partial preference is that when I compare this values A1 to A3, so obviously I would always benefit on the positive scale, benefit negative scale is the least. So, my comparison would be A1 would always be preferred with A3, but when I compare A1 with A2, A2 and A3, no such score is given, they are 0 on both the scales, positive scale, negative scale, they are 0 combined one. So, no such ranking can be given. So, if EKL is 1, then K is preferred than L. So, eliminate any columns which have an element of equal to 1. So, once we remove that, we only have the case of 1 is preferred to alternative 3. So, when I compare A1 is definitely preferred with A3, when I compare A2, A3 nothing can be said, there is a question mark because both on a negative body scale no score. When I compare A1 with respect to A2, again nothing can be said. So, 1 if I rank them, obviously alternative A1 is better than A3, but nothing can be said when I compare A2 A3 and A1 A2. So, comparing concordance and discordance, we have formulated the simple problem accordingly. So, with this I will end this lecture and continue more discussion over the ELECTRE process in the next class. Thank you very much.